Well, it's 1996 now, and I had just been elected president of the American Psychological Association. And presidents are supposed to have initiatives and themes, and I really didn't know what mine would be. And so it was at that epiphany in the garden with Nikki in which I shouted at her and told her to get to work weeding with me, and she called me a grouch and said that she was able to stop whining, and so she could do that, I could stop being such a grouch. In that moment, JP, I learned three things. The first was that Nikki was exactly right. I was a grouch, and I was proud of it. So a grouch is someone who can see everything that's wrong and can criticize it. And indeed, I was proud of doing that. But for the first time in my life, it occurred to me that perhaps any success I had had in academia and in the world was not because of critical intelligence, but in spite of it. And so I resolved to look harder for what was right rather than for what was wrong. That was the first thing. And I also resolved to become a happier person. And indeed, I measure that kind of thing. And it worked. The second was that I realized that my theory of being a parent or a teacher was wrong. Essentially, it was remedial. And that somehow, if I could find all the things that Nikki was doing wrong and correct them, I'd get an exemplary child. And it occurred to me that was nonsense. That conversely, what I really needed to do was to find out what Nikki's strengths were. I had just seen one, the ability to talk to an adult. Reinforce it and help her to lead her life around what she was good at, as opposed to correcting what she was bad at. And the third thing I realized was that my profession, psychology, was half-baked. It was baked about suffering and misery, but there was no science and no practice of the opposite about well-being and happiness. And so I got my presidential theme, and I've spent most of the last almost 30 years since then working on well-being and happiness.